the Future podcast is brought to you by Eberhard Ag Solutions. Join us as we talk to top entrepreneurs in the agricultural space about their methods of obtaining success in their endeavors. And now, your host, Dan Eberhard.
He's going to kill it.
You got a lot of energy. I will try to have as much energy as Dan has here. Crowd looks a little good today, more than I expected after last night. So, as Dan said, my name is Evan Schout. I tend to pace when I am up here, so I apologize if I go back and forth too much. I run about 750,000 acres of risk management in the province for Maverick Ag. As well, I do CFO work for about 120,000 acres in the province. My biggest and most influential client right now, Hebert Grain Ventures. Obviously the reason I'm up here today. So what I'm going to present on today is, how many in the crowd have heard the term big data? Kind of what I expected. How many in the crowd are hearing the term big data? Okay. So what today is going to be is I'm going to turn big data into what we call data analytics. So as part of my CFO position with Hebert Grain Ventures and with a few of the other large farms in the province, what I do is I look at not only financial data, but I look at human resource data, I look at machinery data, I look at agronomy data, and I break it down to the smallest piece I can find. Okay? So that is essentially what I'm going to focus on today. So I'm sure some in the crowd have seen this slide a few times. We tend to use it in majority of our presentations. Reason being is it kind of gives a purpose to why I'm actually standing up here today. So what you're looking at is the Netflix Blockbuster trajectory of their lifespan. So we all know Blockbuster. I'm sure many have rented. I use rented from Blockbuster in the past. Reason being is that in 2003, Netflix actually approached Blockbuster and said, "We'd like you to buy us." Blockbuster looked at him and said, "You know what? We really don't think we need you. We are the #1 video rental store. We've gone from VHS to CD to Blu-ray. We've gone 7-day rentals, no late fees. We're leading the industry, guys. And you know what? I don't think anybody's going to watch a movie on their cell phone. We don't believe it." Now, as we all know, the lifespan, Blockbuster, I'm pretty sure nobody in the room is renting from Blockbuster anymore. And Netflix is doing quite well. Our belief is that in agriculture, we are in the 2003-2004 right now. Don't get me wrong, we've come a long ways. We started with light bars to GPS to RTK. We've come a ways. But honestly, guys, we're just touching the surface. Right now, agriculture is the #1 industry researched in Silicon Valley. It's not companies like Bayer, BASF, it's companies called Google that are more interested in agriculture right now, and Microsoft. Okay? So that's where we feel we're at right now. So, the best way we find to get our point across is real life stories. So I'm going to spend the next half hour, give or take, 40 minutes, opening up to you exactly our real life story. So what you see up there is, we sat down in March at Hebert Grain Ventures with the whole advisory team, and we set out our strategic vision for 2019. And this is what actually came up on the board. So, #1, farm culture and human resources, because honestly, people is the reason we farm. Our team is the most important part on our farm. It's also the part we do the most work on our farm. #2, labor, power, machinery optimization. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time here because I spent 12 years at MNP and I'm a bit of an accountant nerd, and this is the most data that I have. Crop input optimization. I'm not an agronomist, so if we have agronomists in the crowd, which I know we do, I like that I'm not an agronomist because it takes away my bias. If Christian tells me that we can grow 100 bushel canola next year, who am I to say no? Just make sure I see the data. Okay? Planter and drill. So we tend to set up our farms so we will not implement anything across the entire farm until we've got 3 years of data on it. So we do a significant amount of trials. If after 3 years the data has shown 3 consistent years of profits on it, or at least optimization on it, we then implement it across the farm. Can't isn't an option, it's a challenge. This came from the patriarch of the farm, Louis Hebert, Christian's dad. All it is it's a mindset shift. It's literally just starting to look at things differently than we have in the past. Okay? And last, 2020 update. How many people in the room had a really hard 2019? So about midway through summer, this got added. Be bulletproof. All that means is we started looking at the financial data and all the other things we could pull, the risk management data, and tried to come up with a way that we can be bulletproof. Get rid of the lows, so get rid of years like 2019, and capture the highs. Okay? So, as I said, I'm going to start with farm culture. Our motto at Hebert Grain Ventures is, we hire first, and then we find the work. As farmers, we're really good at creating work. The one thing we're not really good at is finding very skilled labor. So, example, March 1st this year, we grew 7,000 acres. We added 1 part-time employee. We were overstaffed, but we found a few very good people in the last couple of years. We didn't want to let them go. Further example, Christian's a CPA. I'm a CPA. And we have 3 girls that are accounting technicians in our office. We have 5 individuals for the financial function of this farm. So, legacy statement. The reason I have it up there is, on our farm, that is pasted on every wall, in every shop, and every single one of our employees, if you ask them, could give you that heart word for word. Reason is, as a leadership group, we want to create a vision. So that's the first step. Create a mission, create a vision. Second step, make sure your team wants to follow that vision. Because if your team doesn't want to follow you, years like 2019, where harvest took 96 days instead of 46 days, we have a lot of burnout. And then you don't have retention. And then you run into HR issues. So we need everybody to buy into our mission. Bottom right, we have what's called replaceability and management. Reason this is here is I sat down with, I guess 2 weeks ago, with about 4 of my largest producers and most proactive guys. And all these guys are my age. All these guys have young children. And all of them have told me sometime in the past 10 years, whether I was an accountant or their CFO, that they want their kid to take over this farm. These guys are 35 to 40 years old. So the question we posed 2 weeks ago was, if something happened, disabled, death, look at the worst case scenario, how many of these farms actually wake up the next day and they're still farming? So I had a book of about 100 clients at MNP, and I've got another 5 or 7 now. I've had 1 farm over the last 13 years that would live through the ownership dying. Replaceability of management. So this is on our strategic plan. How do we eliminate the need for ownership to always do everything? Okay, so there's a lot on this slide. The majority of what this is saying is 46% of farmers who reported labor vacancies to the Canadian Agriculture HR Council delayed or canceled an expansion. Not because it was too expensive, not because they couldn't get financing, because they couldn't get labor. The RBC 4.0 that got released, I think, last year, beginning of this year, 125,000 employees short in the agriculture field right now to grow the amount of grain that we need to grow. Primary agriculture is the highest sectoral job vacancy rate at 7%. Okay, so now you're asking, why am I talking about this? This is not data. The reason I'm talking about this is because as farms, we have to start creating processes to find labor. And not only to find labor, but to keep it, to retain it. So, what do we do at Heber Grain Ventures? Bottom left corner, that's called an employee process manual. When I started at MNP, I got a book, probably 25 pages long, set on my desk. And for the first 2 days, I got told, read it. It's a policy manual. How many farmers in the room have a policy manual for their farm? Nobody willing to answer? Okay. So what our policy manual outlines is, it gives the story of Heber Grain Ventures. It gives the vision, the history, why we do what we do, and then it gives all the policies, whether it's a drug policy, an alcohol policy, a truck policy. All it does is give them a full picture of this farm and what our beliefs are. Why is that important? Because onboarding, if you have a policy manual, there's a 66% better success rate. We want people to interview us, and we want people to choose our farm over the neighbor's farm. Because everybody's got a shortage of labor. The other thing, retention. So replacing one of your key employees, based on the math, is about 2 times the cost. So if you lose a key employee and you got to replace them between hiring, firing, and finding that next guy, it's about 2 times the cost. Why is this important? Because we don't want to lose anybody. So how do we not lose anybody? We have a pension plan. We have shift implementation. You know at the start of the week on a Friday, doesn't matter if the weather's nice or not, you're not working. That's your day off. We pay overtime. Now the overtime is a bit of a tricky one because obviously as farms we are cyclical. However, what it does is it keeps the COO, the Chief Operating Officer of Heber Grain Ventures, on his toes. I make the budgets. He's got a budget to make for HR. If we pay a lot of overtime in a year, he blows his budget. Then he's talking to Louis and Christian on why we overspent on labor. The other thing it does, and we didn't quite know what would happen when we implemented it, 19 was the first year, it really motivated our employees. So we just had the worst harvest ever. Nobody left. Nobody got angry. There wasn't internal issues. We just kept going along. So benchmarks we use, for every 2,000 acres we grow, we want to add a person, if we don't already have that person on staff. That comes out to about 1.25 hours paid per acre. The reason we run these benchmarks is, burnout is the #1 issue on farms. We overwork our employees, they leave, they're not happy with us. We want to avoid that. How do we avoid that? Make sure we don't burn them out. Other thing we do, Christian and I are both members of Strategic Coach. It's a program run out of Toronto. It's an entrepreneur program. We deal a lot with HR. So what you see in the far right corner is what's called the ABC model, or the Unique Abilities model. We have every single one of our employees fill this out. Reason being is, how many people, or somebody in the crowd, tell me, what's the worst job on the farm? The one you hate the most. Somebody humor me, yell it out.
Shoveling, watering grain.
Perfect. That was my #1, shoveling grain. So what did we do as management team? We assumed nobody wants to shovel grain. It's the worst job ever. However, this tool, what we ask guys to do is we ask them to put their favorite tasks, or the ones they're good at, the ones they don't mind doing, the ones they think they're okay at, and the ones they hate and the ones they're bad at. Give us an idea of what you want to do at Heber Grain Ventures. Shoveling grain, 2 of our guys like doing it. They like the physical activity. They sit in a tractor for 20 hours a day. They like shoveling grain. We made the assumption they didn't. We were wrong. Our bookkeeper sits at a desk all day, is now our rock picker and our swather operator. We assumed she was an office person. She didn't want to get out of the office. Nope, her #1 thing is she wanted to drive a tractor. Not $1 million rig, but a rock picker. I just want to drive a tractor. We also use a whole bunch of other indexes, Colby, impact filters, Myers-Briggs, personality traits. You have to know your team. Okay, labor power machinery. I'm going to spend some time here. I was in here yesterday and Terry Aberhart Presented a lot on the top line, the gross margin. We went into revenue, precision ag, how they're using or what we think is coming on data, on the actual yield, agronomy side. I'm going to concentrate more on the actual fixed costs, the business side. So, 3 stories with this one. Number 1 story. Throughout my years as an accountant, my one thing I tell all my guys, quit looking over the fence. New equipment is not the biggest issue right now in equipment utilization. It's how much we have. So when I farmed, we had 4,000 acres, we did it with a 30-foot drill. Anybody tried buying a brand new 30-foot drill lately? They don't make them. We have 60s, we have 80s. Most of my farms for 5,000 acres probably run 260s. The problem is not new equipment, it's how much equipment we're using. Number 2 story. So Christian is a graduate of the TPAP program out of Texas A&M in the US. It's a management program. Speaks very highly. Down there, when he was there in 04, he met a guy by the name of Danny Kleinfelter. Anybody in the room knows the name, you know why I'm talking about him. If you don't know the name, Google him when you get home. He's one of the most influential minds in agriculture. So, they were at supper the first night, and Danny didn't know a lot about Western Canadian ag. He said, how come you guys don't see 24 hours? So Christian, like every other farmer, says, too wet, too cold, too dangerous, I'm pulling the drill out every 5 minutes. Every excuse you can think of. And he says, whoa, just slow down. Let me rephrase the question. It's 3 years from now. You've been running 24 hours. Tell me how you did it. Well, we put light bars on every machine. We had to do a shift, because obviously you need a night shift, you need a day shift. We hired more people. We've been running 24 hours for the last 7 years. Our record was we did 13,000 acres with 1 80-foot drill. Labor utilization. It's just a mindset. Third one, the slide you see up there. John Deere, we work very closely with them. I'm a red guy personally, but with my job I have to tie into the John Deere stuff. This is the stats on 4440 sprayers. So far right, all machines in Western Canada, the working percentage, 37.5% of the time. What that means is when that machine is actually turned on, the nozzles are actually only spraying 37.5% of the time. So you have a $500,000 sprayer, you're using it less than 40%. So the first year, Heber Grain Ventures was just over that, 38.2 or 4, somewhere in there, I think. One thing you're going to notice about my partner and co-founder Christian is average size. So what did we do? We didn't go out and buy a new machine. We added a batch fill in the trailer, we hired a student to come out and run the trailer, and we timed our fills. 21-minute fills, we got down to 7 minutes. That was the record. That's the result, 54.8. This year we were 62.1. Again, I'm not real happy with 54%, but on the grand scheme of things, that was $2 and some extra profit because we ran that sprayer longer and we did it more efficiently. We did 920 hours on that sprayer that year, sprayed 80,000 acres with one sprayer. It's utilization. Okay, so I added this slide. This one's not in Christian Presentations because part of it was he didn't know I added it. I was bored one night watching a hockey game. I'm sourced up to his JD link. So I went on, while they were still combining in September, and I pulled the data off his 5 combines, the hours data, fuel data, just to see what I could find. I'm an accountant. This is exciting for me. So, the next day I phoned him and I said, I'm going to send you a slide, but I do not want you to look at it until after harvest, because you're not going to like it. Why does he not like it? Because we spent $4,000 waiting for grain carts. That's the combines are full, grain carts aren't there. Sitting idle. The other thing we did, spent 46 grand on transport. Driving field to field. So if anybody's walked the trade show out there, seen First Pass, we've been using their product for a year, 2 years? We're on year 2. The reason we use them, or looking at using them, 46 grand is a big amount of money. So what First Pass does, it gives you the AB lines, the logistics. The most efficient way to combine your fields. The reason we're excited is not only that, but we want to logistic the whole farm. I want to know, should I see that one first, that one, that one, that one, from a logistics standpoint? Where should we put our approaches? Where should we park the trucks? What's the best roads to take the semis down to get to the fields? We want to do full logistics. The other thing, if I'm looking at a quarter of land and it's 30 kilometers away, the majority of farms will just look at the price of that land, run the numbers, right? We're good. I want to be able to run those numbers, and then I want to know what it's going to cost me to drive back and forth. Because if that cost is too great, and I'm not making money off that, why am I farming? The last bit of data, I've got other clients that use First Pass as well. I looked at some of the data today that they provided me, and this is just on the spot here. I had one farm that drove 17 miles on one section, more than the optimal field would have been. So you pulled all the combine data on one section, and then they put the optimization of where they should have been driving, 17 miles. I'm actually excited to get home because I'm going to run the numbers because I know all this financial data. He's not going to like what I tell him because that's one section. Okay, last part of this slide I want to focus on. How many guys here run deer? How many guys here have Harvest Smart or Selfdrive? Half. Okay. Heber Grain Ventures, we have it. We preach it. We want you to use it. The reason we want you to use it is 2 years ago when we first started playing with it. Some of our guys think they're better drivers than a computer. So we said, that's fair. We're going to test it. So we did three days test, 3 different drivers. The efficiencies were about 20%. Anybody in the room who thinks they can outdrive a machine, you can't. So we took that 20%, and all of a sudden I figured out, when I was playing on my phone, I can pull the hours that his guys are actually turning it on, when they actually hit the button. Why is this important? Because at a 20% efficiency, Christian lost 1,572 acres by his guys not hitting the button. Why is this important? We still have 400 acres of barley in the field that wouldn't be in the field if guys had just hit the button. This is the data analytics we're pulling off these things. Okay, so I'm going to touch on the top gross margin side. Again, I'm not an agronomist, but I'm going to go high level. This was crop intelligence data from last fall. What it said was that if we got 100% of average rainfall, we had enough moisture in the ground to grow 80 canola. Okay? The reason I have top 60% of field written up there is that I think as producers, we handcuff ourselves. We do a very poor job farming the best parts of our fields. The reason I say that is, the canola growers want us to grow 52 bushel by 2025, I think is the number. If we assume that 10 to 20% of our fields don't really produce a lot, between sloughs, washouts, salinity, the rest of our field really needs to grow a lot of grain. So let's say 80. 80 times 3 pounds of nitrogen means we need 240 pounds of nitrogen to grow that 80. How many guys in the room put 240 pounds down? Not very many. Now, most say that's too much. It's a waste of money. It's not going to work. There's the farmer's edge data that we pull. We use them to essentially quantify our data analytics. Surprise anybody that the best possible uptake for canola growth, 180 to 240. The phrase we use in a lot of our presentations is, you don't know what you don't know. Until somebody shows you, you just don't believe it. So we've used this one on a couple presentations, so I apologize if you've seen it. This is the crop intelligence data, I think from 17. So we'd had about 40% of average rainfall. Most of the neighbors had stopped spraying, stopped fungicide, pulled back everything. Heber Grain Ventures went out and top dressed every every single acre. The reason we did it? Crop intelligence, the moisture probes, told us we had 11 inches of available water. We had yield potential. Then they went and said 30-year data of rainfall. We're due for a rain. Don't get me wrong, it's based on probabilities, but we're due for a rain. So, we did it, and we got a rain 3 days later. Why is this important? We spent about $21 on application of that top dressing. We had a protein boost that gave us a $1.25 premium, and our check strips were about 11 bushel an acre difference. It's $162 return on investment. That's 7 to 1. Now, if we'd have made that gut check feeling and actually made it without the data, we wouldn't have top dressed. Nobody would have. You got no rain. We had it this year. But the data made the decision for us. It's taking it out of the hands of the producer and telling you this is the answer. Okay, so our planter seeder trials, the slide's not real clear, but the dark spot in the middle, that's the yield. So we use a corn planter set up as a canola planter. And again, we do trials for 3 years. So this is our trial. The far left column is planter at a low rate, that's 2.5-ish. Second column is planter at a high rate, about 5. And then seeder at a low rate, seeder at a high rate. Doesn't matter what type of seeder you use, they're all the same. So, yield-wise, planter ended up about 62-ish. Drill at a high rate, which is what the majority of farms in Canada do, ended up at 60, 2 bushels. Enough, but nothing to write home about. The part I want you to focus on is the green columns. On the far left, that's the mortality rates. So on the planter at the low rate, our mortality rate was 26%. Air seeder at a high rate, 52%. So if we're spending $60 an acre on canola seed, who wants half of it to die as soon as it gets put in the ground? This is the data we're pulling. Okay, so the can't isn't an option, it's a challenge. Reason I say mindset shift. Who in the room seen the movie Moneyball? All it is baseball took data analytics for on-base percentages and made their teams. The drift of it. If sports is doing this, why are we not doing this in agriculture? It's just data. So the quote we pull out of there is, we're asking the wrong questions. The only question you have to ask yourself is, do you actually believe in this? So I've done this presentation 9, 10 times in the last few weeks. Christian's done this in the past. The number one, not complaint, but the number one comment we get is, it's not for me. It's too technological. Can't do this on my farm. The reason I'm sharing all this, guys, is we're doing this. We're actually doing this on our farm. This is not the dreamer aspect. This is being done. The other quote we have, if it's not broke, don't fix it. We don't run that one. We run, if it's not broke, you haven't looked hard enough. If we think we're perfect at something, trust me, there's somewhere, somebody else doing better than us. You just got to find it. All right, so the last one, be bulletproof. So when I say the word be bulletproof or risk management, Christian and I obviously are tied a little bit into global ag risk. I'm not talking insurance here today. I'm talking be bulletproof in all aspects of your business. So how many guys we have on Twitter in here? On that whole slide, what are the most talked about 2 items in the last 3 months? I made it really easy. It's the first 2. Weather, government. What are the 2 items you guys have absolutely no control over? Weather and government. Yet it's the most talked about thing on social media. So, the reason I say that is, when the canola price plummeted because of what our government did, how many guys booked basis? Because basis got really good. How many guys have actually started hedging some canola? There is things we can do, but as people, we're really reactive. We always sit back and say it'll get better. Or we listen to Twitter and we say, you know what? It's not our fault, someone else's fault. I'm just going to play the blame game. Working capital and equity. We've gone through 12 of, minus the last 2, we've gone through a decade of really good farming. Cash flow on farms compared to costs, we're actually backwards. We're worse than we were a decade ago. We have less cash compared to our operating expenses. Labor and human resources, as I told you, we're 125,000 people short of what we need. Cost of production. I'm going to show you a couple of slides at the end here. Cost of production has gone from about 118, 120 through the roof. I don't have a farm that's under 350. So somewhere around $150, $200 increase. At $10 canola, that's 15 to 20 bushel just to pay the bills. Leverage and interest rates. So when our government came into power, they made tax changes. Again, social media, they're trying to make it so we can't sell our farms. They're attacking us. They're coming after us. You want to know the one thing social media didn't actually touch on? Is while we were complaining, the Bank of Canada popped its rate about a quarter point. If you do the math, that quarter point cost my farms way more than any tax change they brought in. And yes, you can still sell your farm to your children. It's just a mindset. Private and government insurance, I'm going to cover it on the back end. How many people stress test their farm? And by stress test, I mean, based on their financials, know the worst case scenario on August 1st if they got a frost. I would highly recommend everybody goes home and does it, or has their accountant do it. It's mind-boggling. The reason we stress test our farm is we know what the worst case we can take is. If we actually end up below that, I better be looking at some form of insurance. Crop, agri-stability, private, I don't care which one. Use them all. They all work together quite well, actually. Stacking programs is one of the favorite things I do. But know your worst, know what the possibility of being below that worst is, and make sure you cover yourself. Risk management will continue to get more and more important, guys, because our costs aren't going to get smaller. They're only going up. Anybody who's looked at trading equipment this fall, our costs are going up. So that's the average Western Canadian farms. So the blue, that's your price of inputs. Labor, power, machinery is the gray. Land building finance costs are the yellow. Net income is that nice little line that keeps going up and down, up and down. We are in a very volatile industry, guys. And this is the average. So everybody take the picture of the average. There's the top 25% of farms. So going back to Christian's 5% rule, it doesn't take a lot. 5% difference makes a significant difference in that bottom line. Now to scare the rest of everybody, there's the bottom 25% of farms. 11 years of losses, guys. Don't get me wrong, we are very equity-rich farms. There's not many businesses, no matter how much equity, can take 11 years of losses. So I apologize for not having newer data, but we just can't seem to find newer data on this. How many farms do you guys actually farm? Have you ever sat down and figured out how many homesteads you farm? This is where the industry is going. We're less farms, bigger farms. We farm 31. We have 31 homesteads on our farm. Okay, so I added this in because, as I said, most people that left always looked at me and said, you know what, it's not for our farm. We can't do this. Everybody says, you talked about John Deere, you talked about crop intelligence, you talked about a whole bunch of equipment stuff. I don't want to spend the money, that's too expensive. How many people in the room file a tax return? I'm hoping all of you, or else I'm just going to deny I even talked to you. If you have filed a tax return or gave the bank a set of financials, you have the most data that you need to make a very large percentage of your decisions. Ratio analysis, working capital, debt service, debt to equity. Your financial statements can make a lot of decisions for you if you actually analyze them. If you don't analyze them, talk to your accountant. If your accountant doesn't analyze them, talk to a different accountant. Cost of production, know your cost of production. TPAP had stats, so it's the management program, so they bring in what they consider some of the best of the best. When they took the stats in Christian's year, 50% of the people that attended were marketing it without knowing their cost of production. They had no idea what their break-evens were. But they could market, but no idea what break-even was. Stress test your farm, working capital, we talked about it. Debt capacity, insolvency, bankruptcy. The reason I have that up there is we all know what land values have done. The risk in farming is not bankruptcy. The risk of farming is insolvency, cash flow. In the past, everybody assumed we had a lot of equity. The banks are just going to keep giving us money. We just keep giving them collateral, they keep giving us money. It shifted. The number one ratio in the banks right now is debt service. It's not how much collateral you have, it's can you actually repay our debt based on how much money you're making. So we just went through 2 of the worst years in farming for some of the farms I know. Debt service is the issue, not debt to equity, not working capital, debt service. Land movement and succession. The average age of farms in Saskatchewan is between 60 and 65. There's going to be a lot of land trading hands in the next 10 years, guys. And I'm not saying not through succession, transition. There's also going to be a lot of third-party sales. Okay? Is your farm ready? Can you expand? Replaceability of management I covered. So, that's the macro. There's nothing up there that really costs me any money other than filing my taxes to actually get data from. Micro, field by field. So crop rotation, gross margin. You all probably run those numbers. Labor, power, machinery. How much land can you rent versus how much can you purchase? The reason that's up there is I've got a lot of farms that in order to purchase one really expensive quarter, they actually have to rent 10 other quarters to make sure the cost structure doesn't go up. Equipment utilization optimization. If you have a combine that is newer than, let's say, 4 or 5 years, everything I showed you today on that slide, you can pull that data. It's there. The term of big data always scares people. You guys have most of the stuff I've talked about today. You just have to spend the time to actually get it off the machine and run the numbers. Snake oil versus advantage. Again, the reason we trial 3 years before implementing is because there's a lot of snake oil out there. Make sure we know what we're actually buying and putting down. So just to finish up, legacy statements. So I'm not here selling anything. The reason Maverick Ag is here is that Christian's philosophy was he wanted to make the industry better. So, as Hebert Grain Ventures, he goes out, he does all the guinea pig work, he does everything I need him to do. As Maverick, I come up here, I make the slides, I do all the analytics, and I show you. In agriculture, we have what's called rugged individualism, if anybody's heard that term. All that means is we like to keep stuff inside, hence the reason we have mental health issues in agriculture. We don't like to tell people, whether it's good or bad. This is our way of trying to fix that. Here's the open book. That's all I got, Dan. So this is the social media stuff. Maverick Ag's website, which will have a whole bunch of blogs, podcasts, templates. Please look at it. It should be up January, I'm hoping. You can always go to christianhebert.com. There's a lot of good content there as well. That's all I got.
That's awesome. Let's have a big round of applause for that presentation. I think there's some great value there. And we essentially have 100 people in the room, so I think we should have some questions. But we want to have a list to go around, give everybody the opportunity to put the contact card in to win some gin. Perfect. I have a question. So in your practice, working with your clients, how do you get clients to focus on the important things versus what they want to focus on or they naturally focus on? Because you've illustrated it, we can all see it. Tell me that magical mystery.
So I show the numbers. For me, We as farmers deal in acres and numbers. I can sell you the dream, but until I actually tell you what something's costing you, you don't actually get the impact. So for example, the slide I showed Christian, $46,000 on driving field to field, bothers him. 1,500 acres that we didn't get combined because of guys not hitting a button, bothers him. So all you gotta do is you need to figure out where you wanna start. Once you find that number, it becomes a really easy discussion.
All right, let's have some a couple more questions before lunch here, if you guys like. Yeah, UTech. Here you go, champ. No, that's actually barbecue sauce. You still have a chance on the gin, so it's kind of double dipping, but have at it. It's capitalism.
So what do you do if you do all your data analysis and the data says 88 and you still really want to do it? Like, for example, you said farmland, right? Half section of the land comes out the side, half million a quarter, and make 86 of that from a investment perspective. But it's been there forever, you've always wanted it. So you're buying it.
Number one risk in agriculture is you as the manager. The question was, what do you do to actually get over that hump of believing the data is correct or the gut check of making a poor decision? So, for example, the land one I brought up. And trust me, everybody in this room has probably faced this one. You got a chunk of land, you really want to buy it, but every number that you've seen and every data analytic has told you, you will not make any money off that land. Over a lot of years as an accountant, I can promise you 99.9% of the time, you're going to buy that land. It's the gut check, it's the mindset, it's the money ball. Do you actually believe in this thing? Because if you can't change your mindset and you leave here and, like I said, you say, you know what, not for me, you're going to make that decision all day. If you can change your mindset to where the data is getting rid of your own head, so the data says this is right, and I trust the data, and I've looked at the data, and I've made sure that the data is correct, it's just a mindset shift. Don't buy it. Don't buy it. Don't buy it.
Oh, and after lunch, we're going to be talking about weather and politics. Jim. Okay, Jim, I'll come back there with the mic so everybody can hear. We'll do this once. Run like money.
I got a question just about the opposite of that question on why are we not selling $500,000 quarter land? You
tell me.
We got a buyer in the front.
I have a lot of, if you want to know what the worst circumstance I've ever been in as an accountant, I had a client come in and we run the numbers, and the discussion was, you could have made more money not farming this. So we got land rent. Guys, you've seen it, 50, 100, 150. You want to see some really wide eyes? Have his wife sitting beside him, and then tell him that he could have made more money sitting on a beach in Jamaica, not farming it. That's the flaw, is that we are creatures of habit. We see land, we want land. My father-in-law has literally told me he will never sell his land. That is his legacy. That's fine. But you're going to come across those decisions, right? At $500,000 a quarter, I can run the numbers all day. They don't work. And that's without me knowing your gross margin. That's without me knowing anything about your operation. They don't work.
My question to you guys is, do you still want to hire this guy to tell you not to do the things that you want to do? Pretty fascinating. I'll give you the mic here.
I just got a question about your, to replace a worker, you said it took 2.5, is it 2.5 years of annual salary? Is that based on
2 times the cost. So
Okay.
if you're paying him $20 an hour, by the time you're done hiring, firing, interviewing, onboarding, everything, comes out on our farm about 2 times the cost.
Annually or just, okay.
Yeah.
And where do you, that's just off your analytics?
That's just off our analytics.
Okay.
Yeah. We have not, don't get me wrong, we've shown a lot of slides up here. To think we're perfect, we're not. We still lose employees. but we also have the exit interviews, we have everything. We want to collect as much data as we can because we want retention to be zero. And I've got other farms that I do work for that it is zero. Trust me, I have them talking because I want to know what you're doing and what he's doing and what everybody in this room is doing if you're doing it better than me. Okay?
I guess I got a follow-up question for it. Then with your farm, you're saying you don't want them going to the next guy, but I think every farm has people that aren't invested in the farm. Like, it's a job. Like, and it doesn't matter how much more you pay them. Doesn't matter how much more responsibility that they want that you give them.
Yep.
Like, they walk away. So, is there anything that you found that has worked for that? Like, other than showing the vision and everything, or?
We've done a few different things. We do trucks. So all of our employees have trucks. If they stay with us for 5 years, the truck's theirs. Stuff like that, little incentives. I was at a Whitman consulting course down in the States a month ago or so, and he talks about corporate governance, he talks about HR processes. And his biggest thing is that if we actually sat down and did a compensation summary for a lot of our guys, so you guys as owners, how many of you guys run your cell phones through the company? How many of you run your trucks through the company? Your fuel, housing, house repairs, your dryer that you replaced. Don't tell your accountant that one, but when you actually run those numbers, I've had farmers tell me they take 40 grand out of a company. By the time I'm done, it's 90. It's the same for employees. You have to show them the benefits they're getting that might not be a paycheck, but stuff that other farms aren't doing for them. So the pension plan, stuff like that.
Overtime, what parameters are you paying overtime?
So we're 1.25 over a solid 8-hour day, which then makes our COO really angry. So right now we have shifts. So we try to condense that 8 hours. Don't get me wrong, if it's hour 8 and we took a corner with the drill and the tank had a tire fall off, they're gonna be working overtime. And it's a time and a quarter, but then we gotta look at the other side and how fast we can get that machine back up. It's a sunk cost, right? So yeah, we're 8-hour days, 40-hour weeks, all year round.
Just a quick question about, like, are you using industry, third party, or are you proprietary building your own algorithms for your analytics?
My own algorithms for my analytics. So we use a lot of John Deere tech to get the information. We use Farmer's Edge to get some benchmarks and information. Most of my work, my data analytics, are mine. Nope. You literally saw the Excel spreadsheet up there. Don't get me wrong, I'm in month 7 here. We are working with a whole bunch of industry to try and get it automated. My dream would be real-time information. So we use QuickBooks Online, links to my bank account, links to HupDocs, links to Granular, links to John Deere. The moment I open my QuickBooks, I know exactly that day, that minute, what every single ratio I need is.
So anyways, give it up again for Evan. I thought that was absolutely amazing information.